and I was hired on as a fellow at CU for a couple of years. And I've worked with every kind of athlete all the way at Nebraska. There was rifle. I was working with the rifle team, bowling team at Nebraska, all the way up through football, and same thing at CU. And at one time or another, I had my hand in with every sport at CU. So that's kind of my background.
Awesome. And you're a Holy Family now. I hit record a little late, so.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, Holy Family High School in Broomfield, Colorado.
Gotcha. Cool. All right, and then Veirs, what are you doing, man? Like, who you working with, and kind of what's your background with performance?
So background in performance, basically, I'm in the military, the Air Force. I'm a survival instructor. And basically just teaching aircrew members how to survive in the wilderness for X amount of days or whatnot and what have you. So we do a lot of like rucking and like minimal, I guess, equipment items that we have on our person, but like the physical demand that we have to prep up prior to the job itself is where a lot of people get like washed out in our career field. But thanks to this guy right here, Travis Barrett, he's been helping the injury rate go down, or identifying injuries for the most part. But going back to that, just a fitness journey for me is basically got my CrossFit level 1 certification back in 2014, and then basically was just coaching at small boxes throughout the time, and then expanding that certifications of like on-end academy certifications, and then currently going on my degree for exercise science right now. And then that's pretty much it. And then just try to pick this guy's brain as much as possible when it comes to just fitness in general.
Cool. Where are you getting your degree at?
American Military University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was the only online bachelor's degree that I could get exercise science in. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's we get a new batch of what we call pre-teamers up here every, I don't know, Veirs, what is it? Get them up here every 3 weeks, 5 weeks, something along those lines.
Yeah, there should be like four to five waves of like batches of new guys that come up to Washington throughout the year. So,
and what's interesting is the level of training that we get for guys who make it up here is we get guys who are absolute novices, like strictly talking weight room. Like we get guys who are absolute novices, have never touched a barbell in their life. And then we have guys on the complete opposite end of the continuum where they are very proficient in snatches, clean and jerks, squats, deads. I mean, all of it. So they're either coming from a high school strength and conditioning program that, did a great job, or, they just have crazy endurance and they've just never been taught how to structure anything in the weight room. So that was where I was hoping I could learn some things from you, because I'm sure you're seeing some of the same things with 7th graders when they're coming over the junior high, or, maybe freshmen. I'm not sure how your setup is, but, what's your process look like? Because I'm literally teaching guys how to air squat on the first day after we do a baseline assessment. And I don't know, what's your day-to-day process with these guys?
So with somebody who hasn't seen a barbell or a weight room before, it's going to be different than somebody who has, obviously, just like you were saying. But like with our middle schoolers, so we just started a middle school program this past September, and we've just had 6th through 8th graders coming in, and all I have them doing is, we started with body weight squats, learning the squat pattern, learning the hinge pattern, and then trying to incorporate that into other movements. But a majority of the time is spent on just trying to have them do nothing really structured as far as like weightlifting and stuff like that. A majority of the time is like spent on plyometrics or sprinting. Like every time they come in, I try to have them do, at least a 20-yard sprint, 3 to 4 reps of a 20-yard sprint with some rest in between. I take them through different plyometrics, single leg, double leg, box jumps. We do med ball throws, just try and keep it nice and simple. And then the end of the workout, the last 20 to 25 minutes is more structured, like in the weight room. So they'll started them with, like I said, body weight squats, progressing to goblet squat, learning the hinge movement, and doing RDLs, a floor press or push-ups, floor press. I used to think, well, I'm not going to have them. Why would I have them use a barbell or dumbbells if they can't even do a push-up properly? But I saw how much, using a barbell or dumbbells can help their push-ups improve. Just learning how to stabilize and brace. That's the main issue, I feel like, when people can't do a push-up. Kids can't do a push-up properly because they don't really know how to brace. They always go and arch through their back and try and brace through their lower back. And it's hard to teach them how to brace properly when they're in a push-up position, really, and they're struggling. Their arms are weak. Mm-hmm. So, do a lot of floor press with them. And really, we haven't changed the programming up much. Yeah. Because as far as the movements go, I mean, I'll change the reps and the sets up here and there, but we've kept pretty much the same movements throughout since September all the way through December. And the reason being because they're improving every week. I tell them, if you can go up 5 pounds a week, that's huge. Mm-hmm. Some of them are going up 5 pounds a week. Some are going up 5 pounds every 2 weeks, but they're all increasing. So I don't see why I need to change the exercise for the sake of changing the exercise. And that takes a little bit explaining to them, hey, you're seeing results. We don't need to change the exercise up. They say, oh, I'm bored with this. Can we do something different or something? And then I'll throw in a little something different, but I always keep the same exercises. The main exercise is the same for the most part. I'll vary it up with a different barbell or a different grip or something like that too. But in general, it's the same exercise. When I'm looking at high schoolers, it's really similar. Honestly, I just am able to progress them faster, typically. Mm-hmm. And I try as best I can to progress each athlete, according to their skill level. Mm-hmm. If somebody, I'll start everybody on a goblet squat just to make sure that they can do that squatting pattern. To make sure they know the hinging pattern. And then we go to pretty quickly, we'll go to a trap bar deadlift. And that's really my primary movement. That, and after I have them on a goblet squat for a week or two, sometimes it progresses faster. I'll usually put them under a safety squat bar first. I just like how that's loaded a little bit better. Yeah. It usually encourages a more vertical squat, which I'm more fond of. I coach a more vertical squat, and we might not ever back squat in the first year I have them. Mm-hmm. I'll do a front squat because I think that's really important for if we are going to teach a clean, to have that proper front rack position.
Yep.
and have that ingrained in them so they're catching the bar properly. I don't always clean. In fact, I don't automatically program cleans in with the athletes I coach unless they specifically come to me and say, hey, I want to learn how to clean.
Mm-hmm.
Or as a team, they tell me they want to learn how to clean. Otherwise, I do trap bar jumps,
Yep.
med ball throws, stuff like that. Because in my opinion, I love cleaning. I love snatching for myself. I love Olympic lifts. I do them, every week and have for years. But it took me years to get my form to where it is. And I have 4 years with these kids max.
Right.
If I'm going to spend, in most cases 2, maybe even 3 years to get these kids' forms to a place, their form to a place where their training actually transfers to their sport, why wouldn't I just use a trap bar jump?
Right.
It's like they can learn how to do a trap bar jump in 5 minutes or less. If they know how to do a regular trap bar deadlift, well, it's the same thing. You just jump with it now. And I elevate it up. So I have DC blocks.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually bring it up about 4 to 6 inches from them. So from the floor. And that just helps them learn even faster. And so that's kind of the gist of the progression, I guess.
So what's I guess structure and flow of, like, each time a team comes in? Is it you've got 10 athletes, 20 athletes, and then how's that look for you?
So as far as the high school groups go, before school, I typically have one team in there at a time. Sometimes I'll have 2. Sometimes 2 teams come in there at the same time. Or I try to stagger them by 10 to 15 minutes. That way I can get one team going, at least started on their warm-up, and then the other team comes in, and then we get them started on their warm-up. By the time they're started on their warm-up, I'm moving – or the other team's done with their warm-up, and I'm moving them into their first block or their first activity kind of thing. After school, it's not uncommon for me to have, 3 different teams in there at the same time and a couple individual athletes as well. Because I found that if you tell a kid, well, you can't come in, school gets out at 2:45 essentially. So the first group will start at 2:45. It gets out at 2:20, but they're not allowed to do anything. They have access period to where they meet with their teachers and stuff until 2:45. So a first group starts at 2:45. If I tell a kid who doesn't have practice because they're not in a sport that they can't lift until 3:30, they'll be like, well, I'm just going to leave. So I've had to kind of figure out a way to fit them in there. So I'll dedicate 1 or 2 racks, and we have 15 total racks in our weight room. We have a good amount of racks.
Yeah.
So I'll dedicate 1 or 2 racks to the individual athletes that come in. And there might be, 3 or 4 individual athletes from 3 or 4 different sports, but they're training together and doing the same or a similar program. So after school, right, that first team starts at 2:45. Second team starts at 2:55, and the third team starts at like 3:05 kind of thing. Sometimes I'll have 2 different teams starting at 2:45, and then everybody just learns their warm-up together. I try to keep the warm-ups really the same. I'll change up basically a lunge variation. What I have them do typically is a reverse lunge, 2 sets of 8 reverse lunge. I have them do some sort of plank movement to warm up the core a little bit. I have them do eccentric, 3 seconds down push-ups, and then have them do some sort of light plyometric. That may be jumping jacks. That might be little hurdle hops where they're just bouncing around, warm up that ankle complex. And they just do 2 sets of everything. Takes them usually less than somewhere around 5 to 7 minutes to get through everything, and then they're ready to go. And I'll vary that lunge variation. We'll do lateral lunge. We'll do forward lunge. We'll do lateral slide lunge, stuff like that. But that's typically the only change I have. So that way, when they come in, and it's time to go, I don't have to sit down and say, hey, this is what you have for your warm-up today. They already know. So they can just, bam, get started. Makes things a lot easier. And then they're in there. So if they're in season, they're usually in the weight room anywhere from, sometimes I only have them for 20 minutes. And then they're off to practice. Sometimes I get them for 35 to 40 minutes. Off season, I try to get them in there for at least 45 minutes. Just because, they don't have practice, they can handle a little higher volume in the weight room at that time of the year. So yeah, it's a lot of different variables, whether they're in season, out season,
right.
Before school, after school kind of thing. So,
yeah. I think there's a lot of, debated topics that I've been following on, as I'm sure you have on Twitter and whatnot, in the little strength performance niche for the past couple of weeks is, there's this big argument about, do you do trap bar jump shrugs or do you do Olympic lifts? And, me personally, I'm like, well, you can do both. They both have their place. They'll both fit on the force velocity curve. It's fine. But people would get really worked up about, no, you're in this camp or this camp. And whatever,
Yeah. It's one of those things. Go ahead. I was just gonna say, like I said, I love cleaning myself. I love snatching myself. I love teaching the clean and the snatch to athletes. That's fun, and to see them progress in that.
Yeah.
And when they actually get it to where that bar is like floating and they're not trying to muscle it up and everything like that is huge. I mean, I get jacked, when that happens, and I'm really excited for them. But I also know that takes time.
Yeah.
To get to that point. And sometimes like I was saying, it can take a year or two because things aren't just clicking. And when you only have the kids in there for, like I said, sometimes 20 to 30 minutes, there's a lot of other ways you can work on that power development.
Yeah, because
I actually have it transferred to their sport. Hopefully.
Yeah, because a lot of the people who are getting really worked up and offering their opinion were doing it without context of, well, I don't know what your day-to-day context is of how many athletes do you have, what's your time frame, all of that stuff. And, it just cracks me up because people are just popping off. Just here's what I think. It's like, yeah, cool, man. But like, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
The other one I saw that was funny to me was people got in a big argument, went back and forth. What's his name? Craig Edwards. Craig Edwards tweeted out something about, if you're doing Russian twists and crunches, you're not training your core properly. Mm-hmm. And again, you have really smart people in both camps. One camp is saying, the core is designed to specifically resist motion. That's one camp. Right. Another camp was saying, yes, and the core is designed to facilitate movement. And then there's, again, more people like me who kind of exist in the gray, where it's like, yes, let's do both because it's designed to do both, But I don't know, just these statements of absolute whatever. Yeah. Everybody gets really, really worked up, and it cracks me up. Did you see any of that? Because I heard you talking about you do a plank variation and whatnot.
Yeah, and I mean that's huge. I mean, just people speaking absolutes, but then you look at Twitter, it's like, how can I express something that's not? I don't know how to put this. I guess
in 140 characters.
Right. It's like, how can you not speak in absolutes sometimes in 140 characters? But then, unless you create a thread, but then people are going to read that first and be like, "Oh, what is this guy talking about?" Oh, I'm getting in,
because
it's just social media.
The good thing about that too is it forces, if people will if they'll take pause for a second, and consider what's being said, maybe they'll reconsider how they're doing things. And is what I'm doing, is it the best way? Could it be done better? Is there a more optimal way to be doing things? So there's that. But another thing with you're talking about your programming, how it'll look similar for a lot of athletes, is I think with social media, a lot of athletes think they're a lot further along in training age than they actually are. And all of them have been sold that I need a specialized program.
Right.
And before I moved up here, that was myself and a friend of mine had our own gym where it was all youth sport performance. And I don't know how many times we had to kill that myth of like, basically, you're not as special as you think you are physically. Like unless you have some sort of disease, deformity, special, whatever, like you probably need the same thing as the kid next to you. Much like up here in the tactical setting, it's like, okay, what do I see that these guys need? And most of them have very weak upper backs, weak hips, and the list goes on where it's like, yeah, man, Veirs, how many guys have you seen that have like, their upper backs are all rolled forward due to rucking, their hips are torn up, and knees are torn up. Like it's all the same type of thing. I mean, did you see that going through?
Oh yeah, almost like everybody, like just going through. I mean, it's just, it is kind of frustrating being on like, I would say like a physically demanding job in the military where some of these people feel like they're really special in a sense of like, I want something specific, and they don't have a baseline or a foundation to build off of. So they're trying to build a roof with no like walls or house or foundation to it. And so where Travis comes into play is that, he gives out this structural program to where it sets a foundation, and a lot of people don't like that at all because they want to feel special and they want to grab that sense of, hey, I'm an individual and I'm going to be this great and powerful, strong person. But that coming into this, a bunch of guys have a lot of lower back, shoulder, hips, like you name it, like they got it, especially because of the way that it was approached in like the, again, physically demanding job. It's like I have to beat myself to the ground every single day until I wake up and I can't move anymore. And it's just a 6 month of just pure, like, I hate my body kind of feel, which I'm really glad that it's kind of going away. There is some people that are still holding on to that for some apparent reason. I don't know why. They probably have a mental disorder or something like that. But but yeah, it's progressing in a sense that everybody has like that foundation that they need to build. But like, we have these old seasoned people that are in our career field that are they're just hard broke, and it's going to take a lot to get them back to where they're, at that 100%. But yeah, it's fun to see it sometimes.
Yeah. I see that with high schoolers too. I mean, they feel like they have to be crushed in a workout for it to be.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh man, if I'm not sore for 4 or 5 days after this, well, that workout wasn't good enough. Man, it hurts to sit on the toilet if it doesn't hurt to sit on the toilet the next day, then we didn't do enough squats,
Yep.
What? Where do you get these ideas from?
Yeah, it's really good marketing. It's like,
oh yeah.
Like I was telling somebody yesterday, if we've got 100 workouts, and let's say we got 100 workouts scheduled, and you're so beat up or sore or potentially injured that you can only attend 30 of those 100, I would rather you follow a wave-like sequence where you can attend 90 out of the 100 with those extra 10 being like straight up recovery sessions. because, coming off Christmas break, man, I got my first workout in yesterday. Well, I guess I did one on Sunday, but I did my first structured workout yesterday and felt great, man. Like I hadn't seriously trained for like 5-6 days. And the reason I felt great was because of a basic principle, or what I think is a basic principle, of you need to deload to reload, because your tendons, ligaments, muscles, bone, nervous system all have different rates of adaptation, different recovery rates. And I felt snappy, fast, explosive yesterday. Was feeling good. And all these other guys who never take time off because they're hardcore, I wonder if they ever feel like that. They're probably walking around in a ton of pain because they think it makes them tougher to be like, well, I need to be sore chronically. Not if you can't move.
Right. I think that's a blame of social media, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, just the whole idea of like, you see the Instagram stories of like these Insta famous fitness, models of people of like, I wake up at 4:45 every morning and I don't get out of the gym until 8:30, at night. And some of those things, it's just like, all right, man, like you do you, like that's your thing. But some of these so I mean, I guess I bet you see it all the time where these young athletes go and they see something and they're like, I want to do that, or I want to become him. And it's like, well, I mean, he had to start somewhere, and that it takes years, especially what you're saying about like Olympic lifting. It's like cleaning and snatching and jerk. And it's like, it's hard to explain it to somebody that like in a world of basically everything is all instantaneous, and people want results and they want to see it now. It's like, whenever I blame the shake weight, whenever the shake weight came out,
the big gym.
Yeah, you got a door, you got a gym, it's just like people want to see these results like within the hour that they're at the gym, and it's like, no, you can't.
Yeah, that's another huge thing that I deal with. It's sometimes difficult to get the kids to be consistent in the weight room because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They think, whoa, I've been coming for 2 weeks straight. Why am I not squatting 500 pounds yet? This doesn't make sense. And it's like, whoa, easy. Well, I saw somebody on Instagram, they squatted 500 pounds, and they've been training a lot longer than you have, and I guarantee you they've been consistent that whole time.
Yep.
And because you're not going to get crazy sore after every workout that we do in the weight room, but that's like you were saying, Travis, you're not going to get as much out of those workouts if you're always sore, because you can't. Your movement quality isn't going to be there. You're going to feel like crap. Plus, your body's not recovering.
Yeah.
And if your body's not recovering, you're not getting better. You're not getting stronger.
And
as much as possible, as you possibly could.
Veirs and I were out at the rec center on Sunday, and him and I were just kind of getting a mini workout in, just messing around. And, a couple platforms over, there's a group of, I think there was 4 or 5 teenage kids. And they were probably between the ages of 14 to 16, 14 to 17. And the funniest thing that I'm sure if you weren't there, Everett, you would see it, but thankfully they've got a strength coach like you there to keep an eye on the kids. But anyway, these are teenage boys, and the first thing they do is they go to the deadlift platform, and it's a 1RM contest. And it's like, guys, your movement patterns, like I just watched you guys do 10 reps on 10 different sets, so 10 sets of 1, and all of those 10 look completely different.
Right.
Even when they're failing, like they were failing badly. It was not even like, hey, it didn't even occur to them like, hey, we should drop the weight down and work on our technique. No, like it was straight up like a turtle, like hips were popping up, back rounded, looked like a dog just dropping a deuce. I mean, it was terrible. And these guys were like, one of them was trying to help the other one deadlift or something. And it's like, I've never seen that before. I didn't know that was a thing. But following very basic stuff, like you were talking about, you've been playing around with Dr. Yesis's 1x20, and that's been working really well. So can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah. So I mean, so back when I was at CU, I had gotten the job at Holy Family, but I hadn't started yet. I was thinking, okay, how am I gonna like transition from college to high school, because it's a totally different thing, right? And I figured, okay, well, I've never seen these kids lift before, because I was going to start their summer program as my first interactions with them. And I'm like, okay, so I've never seen these kids lift, but I do think that they have a fairly, at least some experience with weightlifting. I know they've had a program at the school for years. How can I safely introduce several movements to this many people, And so, I started researching the 1x20 and decided, that's the way I should go. And so I tested it out on myself first, but I didn't do it exactly how he programmed it out. I didn't do a lot of isolation movements. I did a lot of compound movements on myself. And so when I first started doing it on myself, I had squat, I had reverse lunge in there, I had RDL, I had a trap bar deadlift in there, I had bench press, dumbbell bench press, and then some isolation exercises in between, kind of thing. And I had, I think, 16 different exercises in there. And the first time I did that, man, it just absolutely smoked me. It's tough to make it, because I'd been training prior to that. I've been training a lot in the 5 to 8 rep range, or sometimes I get down to heavy doubles or triples. So really cranking it up to 20 reps was a shock to my system. And then I slowly, after about a week and a half in, I started adjusting to that a little bit better. And I started seeing adaptations from a cardiovascular standpoint too. Like just walking around on CU's campus, where it's at a higher elevation. There's a lot of stairs. You're walking up hills and stuff like that. I wasn't getting out of breath as much as I used to when I was training like a power lifter. So that was nice. But at the end of me doing this for 5 weeks, I decided, okay, well, let's 1 rep max my back squat, see where it's at. And I hit 500 easier than I ever had before. So I was like, well, shoot, it definitely works for max strength, as well as strength endurance, or however you want to put that. And my vertical jump was still up, like 32, 34. And so I was happy with my performance. So I was sold at that point. Hey, this is what I'm going to use in the high school setting with these kids. So when I started in June, I said it's really different going from college to high school. Well, I had a lot of people tell me that, but I didn't really listen as much as I thought I was listening. And I tried to change way too much. And going from what they were doing before, which was just bench squat clean, to 1x20 is a huge difference. And these kids did not like it, just to be honest. And so what they were doing, and I know they were getting some feedback from some of the coaches, like, oh, hey, whatever Coach Everett's doing, you need to go home and you need to do more, kind of thing. And so that, I feel like, messed with some things too. But so they would go home after doing the 1x20 with me and some speed work and stuff. in the summertime, and then they do like 5x10 on squats, 5x10 on bench, 5x10 on deadlift, and then come back the next day and they're like, "Man, I'm so sore." I'm like, "What? Why are you so sore?" "Well, I went home and I did some squats and deadlifts and bench yesterday." I'm like, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be doing that. That's like way too much volume on top of what we're already doing. No wonder you're so sore." But they didn't listen. So once I got started in school, like in August, I was able to introduce the 1x20 to just more specific groups of athletes who I knew weren't going to go off and do a set or a workout of a ton of squats and deadlifts and bench after that. So I started seeing a lot better results, like with the track team. They were able to do my workouts and then practice the next day because they weren't crazy sore, because they were able to recover from it. So I use the 1x20 sometimes now, but honestly, I'm not as set on using the 1x20 with my athletes now.
So let's pick up where you were at. So basically where it left off was kiddos were going home and crushing themselves with more volume on top of what you were already prescribing. Is that right?
Yeah. And when I was able to finally get a group of kids who weren't doing that, I started seeing a lot better results. Like I said, they were able to practice the next day and not be crazy sore. So, obviously, and I tell them this, if you're so sore from the workouts you're doing in here that you can't go practice the next day, then I'm doing a disservice to you.
Right.
Because I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say that the weight room is more important than being able to play your sport.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you can't play your sport, you're not going to be good at your sport. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you practice it? Well, that's at practice, right? If you're not able to perform well at practice or even perform at all at practice because you're compensating like crazy because you're so sore, then you're not getting better at your actual sport. So that's something I always try and take into account in the weight room. But what I was really noticing a lot is the movement quality in the weight room was improving. And I think that's from 1x20. Honestly, I mean, you're getting 20 reps at something, and slowly building up the weight each time. Anything you do in the weight room is a skill, and you have to learn how to do that movement before you can do it at a greater intensity, I guess. So that allowed me to then, and allowed them to eventually move into a more just standard set and rep scheme, and do those lower reps under heavier weights and stuff like that because their movement quality was so much better. So it helped build and provide a good base of training for them and a good foundation, like you were talking about, Veirs. We all know that the foundation is extremely important to build off of. If you don't have that, then you're just building a roof without walls or foundation, and that's not going to stand. So,
yeah, there's. I was reading yesterday something from a strength coach, Joe Mills, where he was talking about basically he would follow several of his programs are very popular. He's more Olympic lifting coach, where it was, his 20 and 20 basically. And then another one was called like the Big 21. And those were popularized by, Dan John, Lynn Penlay, those guys kind of bringing those to light. But anyway, Joe Mills was saying, hey, if I can take a lifter and have them go from making 4 or 5 mistakes, and then over the course of their career, taking them down to 1 or to 0 mistakes each and every lift, then I've done my job. And that, that's a paraphrase of what he said. But basically, like, for example, those kids we saw the other day, I saw, 10 things wrong with what they were doing on each lift.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to step in and say, okay, which of those 10 do I pick? Well, it's going to be the one that's biggest risk to their health, or, what's the biggest hazard. And that's what's funny to me about inexperienced coaches or people without proper context is they don't know where you're at in your process with that athlete. And they'll jump in and try to say, well, don't you see this? Don't you know that? It's like, yes, I do. But you don't know the conversations that I've had with the athlete prior to and where we're at in our discussion of our A-B conversation before someone else comes in, and I'm sure you've had the same thing. And, Veirs will come in the weight room and help me out when I'm outnumbered, which is as much as he can get away and come in. But I mean, you saw it last week, Veirs, or 2 weeks ago, where we had 40 guys in here, and Veirs and I were working on this workout session with these guys, and we had other eyes in the weight room who don't know performance trying to provide their input. So it's navigating the landscape, so to speak, to say, yes, I understand, I hear you, but that's not where we're at. But,
yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's frustrating too when you get those people who then, like I was saying, some of the coaches were saying, telling the kids, oh, you need to go and do more work on top of this. And I would continually invite those coaches to come talk to me after a lift and I said, I'm happy to explain my progressions. Here's where they're at. This is where I'm wanting them to be by this time. This is where I'm wanting to get them to. And this is what I need to see before I can progress them, kind of thing. And I never once had those coaches come and talk to me after a lift.
Yeah.
They would sometimes they would try to talk to me during the lift when I have literally like 50 to 60 kids in here, and I'm trying to coach all of them. I'm trying to give each kid as much coaching as I can.
Yeah.
I'm moving from rack to rack to rack to rack to rack all over the place, trying to get and see as many reps as I can from every single athlete. And he's trying to have an in-depth conversation with me on training progressions and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I don't know, it's just not a good time.
Yeah.
As you guys probably understand that.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is I think people without the coaching experience and knowledge base, it's, well, you need to coach every single rep. And I disagree. I think it's like, I need to give them input on a rep and then see if they can correct or make the adjustment necessary on the next 2 or 3 reps. And I'm not talking we're not in the neighborhood of 85% plus load, right? We're just talking about hey, if we're in 60 to 80% range, and they've got somewhere from, 5 to 10 reps, let me see if they can adjust out of this with a correction lock. But there are these people out there where they're like, no, you need to give them feedback each and every time, and you need to give them 3 cues. And it's like, no, if you give them too many things to work on, nothing will get fixed. So,
yeah, and also when you're working with a huge group of different athletes, keyword different athletes, hear things differently. You can't just go give the same 3 cues down the line to 10 different athletes. They're going to they could think those are completely different things that you're telling them to do.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to get as individual as I can with each kid. And I try to, just watch each rep. I watch a couple reps before I say anything. I mean, like you said, if they're under 85% plus, I'm not going to be giving them a lot of feedback anyways, because they need to be focusing on what they're doing at that time. The only feedback I'm going to be giving them, if I think I need to, is rack the weight up, because that looks like trash or something like that. You're going to hurt yourself. And then it's lower the weight, But if they're in that lower percentage, then you can give them, like you were saying, a few cues here and there. But if they're not responding, maybe they're too focused on what they're doing, and that's fine. We'll wait until they're done and maybe have a short conversation with them.
Yeah.
And then try some external cues, using body weight or something like that. I think I've been interning I've interned under somebody who's like, yeah, you got to go out there and coach every single rep. Like you were saying, it's like these kids are getting way too much information from us. That's not. I don't feel like it's helpful to them.
Yeah, 100%. And Veirs, what have you noticed in terms of volume with military? Like, I've just noticed as a civilian coming into the tactical side where it's more equals better type of mentality. Is that something that you've noticed?
Oh,
and if so, is that something that can be? Is that so culturally ingrained within the tactical setting, or how do you adjust so people understand like more is not always better kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean that from since the dawn of time, since the military became to existence, more is better. You know, more wins wars, kind of thing. But as a training standpoint, yeah, that was it was a big a big push of, yeah, I need to do all this stuff and keep on going until my body completely breaks down. And in a standpoint, there is like a reason behind that type of madness, and it was more not the physical side of things, but a mental capacity of like finding that point of like, hey, my body can keep on going. It's just my mind's wanting to quit. So there's I guess like a somewhat of a benefit to it, but since like that was back in like the 60s, 70s, and it was like carrying over. But now that we have people that are specializing in strength and conditioning, all this other stuff, that they're toning it back to where it's like, hey, like there's a reason why your body's acting this way. You need to listen to it. And it's really hard because those people that have been in that mindset of like, I need to break down my body completely, it's a mental fortitude for them. Like you go and you see all these people and they see David Goggins, the Navy SEAL, that's just like, you gotta fortify your mind before you do anything to your body. And it's like, all right, that guy, he's a unicorn, if you will, of like he just his body's just that way, like his mind is just that way. And yes, you can get to that point, but I mean, like listening to his podcast, like reading parts of his book, like there's moments in time where he should have died.
Right.
Like he ran like an ultra marathon, like 100-mile like run, and got rhabdo and all this other stuff. And it's like if that was like a regular person, that yeah, he wouldn't be here today, kind of thing. But yeah, there's a give and take when it comes to that, especially in the military side of settings. Because I mean, the reason why we push ourselves to the limit is because if we're ever placed in a position where it's like a life or death situation, we want the person to react or to basically just go and do it. And it's hard for these people, especially in my career field in general, is that, yeah, we have a high physically demanding job, and that our career can basically branch off to do unique things in the military that are special operations. But 1 out of 100 maybe of us can probably do that. But it's just like you hear these stories of these people doing it, and it's just like, yeah, I gotta get to that point. I gotta break down myself and in order to build myself up again. It's like, no, like you can start out small, and then you'll see the progression, but it's gonna take a little bit. And that's again reverting back to hey, like you're not gonna see results in a week or 2 or 3. hey, you might even not see results like for 6 months, but like you got to trust the program. That's what I like to say whenever I'm coaching, like either a group setting or individuals, is that they want to be like, I want to go for my 1RM and my clean. It's just like, all right, man, like we did that last week. You don't have to do that this week. Like, let's trust the program, and we will see results. I promise you. But it's hard for people to stay on course because they're doing a lot of reading. There's so much information out there. It's like, what's right, and yeah. But yeah, you need to get away. I totally try to preach this to everybody that I see at the gym, is that, high volume or more does not equal better at all.
It's just more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally just more.
There's a guy I was working with last week where this is a guy who's got crazy high endurance, and the week prior he had done 500 air squats in a workout. And then we started talking about structuring his program and following something. And I went over everything with him very, very thorough and said, hey man, think of this like a living document. Like if there's anything that hurts, doesn't feel right, whatever, we can make adjustments to the program. Like nothing's set in stone. And week 1 was what I call an adjustment phase. And then weeks 2 and 3 are subsequent loading, because you're getting, okay, this is the idea. Cool. Okay. Week 3 will be your heaviest loading. And then week 4 will either transition to a new program or take a deload. So he's in week 1 and the load is relatively light, and he knocked out 30 quality reps. So you go from 30 versus 500, and he came back in like 2 days later and he's like, man, my legs are destroyed. More so than the 500 squats. And I'm like, well, a couple things are going on. With the 30 squats, you're actually going through a proper range of motion. We adjusted a couple things with his mobility and whatnot. Got him going through a full deep squat. And then secondly, like you actually have some more substantial load, because, his thought was, I understand his logic of, okay, if I want to get my legs stronger, I need to do 600 squats next time. It's like, good night, man. Like at some point you're getting diminishing returns and it's just, like who wants to do that? So
yeah,
he got the buy-in right away where he's like, okay, I understand this now, and moving forward, I'm going to make sure I'm going through a full range. And, finally, like you can get in and out of the gym at such a fast rate as compared to however long it took him to knock out his 500.
Right. I had a question.
Yeah.
So, like Veirs was saying, as far as why people think they need to crush themselves, and you said there is a need for it in the military setting, right? To train mental toughness or whatever, mental toughness. How would you go about doing that in the weight room? How would you go about showing somebody that they can do more than they think they're capable of without injuring them or getting them close to death, kind of thing? Is there a way to train that? I mean, I don't think there is a way to train that to make it extremely applicable to a military setting, right? Because each situation is different, and those are literally life or death situations. But is there a way that you think would be good to try and train that in the weight room?
Yeah, I think basically like a cluster set. So I'm a big believer in like small wins. So we have change plates that go all the way down to 0.25 pounds. So I'll tell guys all the time, like, hey, for example, if you have 100 pounds on the bar, you don't necessarily have to make a 50 or a 90 pound jump. Like
right.
0.25 pounds more is a win. So if I can get them to do a little more weight, then they trust me a little bit more. So then that trust is earned. And then over time, like there was a guy in here this morning. I didn't even ask him what he wanted on the bar. I just grabbed what I thought was appropriate and put it on the bar for him. And we've built up enough trust at this point where he just went in and knocked it out. He didn't even like ask me or second guess or anything. He just hammered out whatever he had to. But that didn't come overnight. That was a slow process of, I happened to see him in here one day and I said, "Hey man, can I tweak a couple things so you don't get hurt?" And that's been a year and a half worth of work for what I did today. So like if somebody was just to come in and see that, they'd be like, "Oh, it's that easy? You just go over and throw stuff off?" But, then as far as like the comments on mental toughness, I was listening to a podcast last week and I can't see who it is, but anyway, they said mental toughness is a choice. And, it truly is, it's been my experience, like just talking with these guys on the tactical side, they all 100% will nod along with that and be like, absolutely, because it's not like conditioning is going to build up your mental toughness, but specifically in the weight room, you can either decide that you want to attempt something you've never done. So we could do that via, 0.25 pounds more, or like a cluster set of, like a 1+1+1 versus like a triple all at once. Now we've still got the same volume, but I've lifted at a higher intensity. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, I think so. I think I have a similar approach, just celebrating the small victories kind of things. Like, man, whenever I hear somebody say, "Oh, I can't do that," or something like that, a lot of times I'll say, "Not with that attitude," and then I'll make them try it, like a pull-up or something like that. And the amount of times that I've had female athletes say that they can't do a pull-up, and now I won't do this with everybody. If there's somebody who obviously cannot do a pull-up, I'm not going to encourage them necessarily to attempt a pull-up. But if I think that they can, I'm going to tell them to get up there and try it, and try and talk them into doing it, because and show them that a lot of times what's holding them back is their mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Them telling themselves that they can't do it is, that's what holds back so many people, I think. And especially, I'm sure I say especially, but I don't know. This is the same everywhere, I feel like. But at the high school setting, I see it more than I did at the collegiate setting, for sure.
Because it really is, like, you get into some psychology, which the general population doesn't understand, that coaching, a large portion, probably I would say 50%, 60% of it is psychological, motivation, behavioral change, all that stuff. And then, the science, like, man, I could throw 5 books at somebody and be like, "Hey, read these books. You'll probably understand the science." But that's where the art comes in, is the art is like understanding what makes people tick. How do you get more out of somebody? All that stuff. And, so obviously, like, if you're around people who are saying that kind of thing, well, starting back with, well, why do you believe that? Where was the first place you heard that? Where did that belief system initially get ingrained? And then one of the things I love from Coach Jonathan Goodman is, run something through a fog filter. So a fog filter is fact, opinion, or guess. So you can do it with anything, but especially training. So you say you can't do a pull-up. Is that a fact? Is that an opinion? Or is that a guess? And we know it's not factual, because there's a female who's on preteen, or going to start our team soon, who she'll have a 26-pound weight around her waist, and she'll bang out 5 pull-ups. And those are strict dead hang pull-ups. And she'll beat, pound for pound, she's stronger than 90% of the guys here. Mm-hmm. So we know it's not a fact, right? Because one person does it and it's repeatable. And then, then there's an opinion. It's like, well, where did that opinion come from? Oh, because so-and-so told you that you couldn't. You know what I mean? So anyway, that stuff gets me fired up for sure, because I feel you. People say the same thing, and it's like, oh, that's weird. I've had 100 athletes do the thing that you're saying you can't do.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
I don't know. Veirs, what are your thoughts on mental toughness and whatnot? Because I'm sure you saw and you continue to see guys who, what qualifies someone as being like mentally tough, not mentally tough.
I don't know. Like it's like there's some people that will like surprise me whenever I see them going through our pipeline or our training and stuff like that, and then there's others where you can just blatantly see it's like, hey, like maybe this is not for you kind of thing, because but like with mental toughness in itself, like me personally, I like playing mind games and stuff like that where it comes to like a physical standpoint, like they go hand in hand. But that's just my approach in life in general. But like I totally agree with the ideas like it's a yes or no kind of thing. Are you yes, I'm going to do this no matter what the cost kind of thing, or is like nah, like playing a logical standpoint of approaching a wall and saying, well, either I'm gonna just stand here and look at it, or can I figure out a way to get through it, over it, under, what have you. But yeah, it can it it I think personally, I think you can totally build like mental fortitude in itself, with even if it is those small wins and stuff like that. I've seen it whenever I coach at a box, and it, again, with the whole idea of like I can't do a pull up kind of thing, and it's you can incorporate the small wins of like, hey, like let's toss in a band on a pull up bar, and then all right, develop movement patterns. Okay, hey, you develop proper movement patterns with a band. All right, let's go with the lighter band. All right, and then going in there, and then those small victories, and then yeah, 2-3 months later, they're doing a strict pull up, and then that is just a mental aspect of like, hey, should I keep on going kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's I find it very frustrating. I believe that everybody would agree on this, is that the the mentality that people, even just stepping into a gym, is their idea of, well, I'm not physically fit, so I'm not even gonna bother go to the gym. And it's like it gets me so mad because I tell everybody that comes in, is like the gym is a place where you become better, so you can do things outside the gym. Like, hey, you come to the gym to work out, so I can go on these hikes, I can go rock climbing, I can do all these outdoor activities because I go to the gym. Like that's people see it again over and over where they watch like Pumping Iron, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is just he lives at the gym and that's all he does. And it's like that was his job. His job was to work out.
Yeah.
You like the gym, for majority of people, the gym is there to just make you better. And then you go out and you do the things that you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating. I hate it when I hear people say I can't do this because I'm not there. It's like, well, we gotta get you there, right? Like,
You gotta start somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah, it's true. It's truly like, just not giving a crap what anybody else. And I think a lot of people go in worrying about what other people are going to think about them or whatever. And I think it truly is, once you take that step or that leap of like just not caring what anybody's going to think, because I was short and fat. I had no muscle. And then like, I still, that's one of the reasons why I'm such a technician, is because I'm not gifted genetically. I have to be good technically. And then the weight the weight on the bar has just come over time, and just because I keep showing up. And, it's just establishing that consistency like you were talking about earlier.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's like we've all three touched on it. Just so important to celebrate those small wins. And thinking about whenever I do that, I try to focus on, hey, you just did something that 10 seconds ago you told me was impossible.
Right.
You literally did something right now that you did not think you could do. Think about that. Think about how much you're allowing your mind to slow you down on other things, hold you back on other things. And, that's what I try to make the focus of what just happened. Not that the fact that they lifted X amount of weight. It's they did something that they literally thought was impossible.
And all right, Veirs. So this thing just cut off, so we're just picking up where we were at. So you were talking about mental toughness, kind of breaking through barriers and that kind of thing, right? So,
just like creating that buy-in, so what Everett was saying, so that small victories kind of thing, and the light bulb moment where you see that person like realize, hey, I got more to give than I say I can. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really cool to see, especially in a coaching standpoint, where you're not going to get everybody, but when you do get that person seeing and realizing, like, hey, this structure or this program that I'm giving you, there's a reason for it. And when people achieve that, it's cool. It's what the reason why we do what we do.
Yeah, definitely.
It's good, man. All right, Everett, you got any closing thoughts? Anything you want to add in there?
Yeah, I just think, that's, you said it right there. That's the reason why we do what we do. I feel like, it's not to make somebody be able to bench more than they did before, but it's like these mental barriers to help them break through. That's going to help lead them on to, bigger, more important things in their life. And, that's something I try to tell the athletes every day. It's like what we do in the weight room isn't just specifically for what you're about to do on the field, or, these are these things that I'm trying to teach you in the weight room. They go hand in hand anywhere in your life. Anywhere in your life, you're going to need hard work. You're going to need dedication. You're going to need consistency if you want to be successful. These disciplines can be applied in any area of your life, and that's really just what I hope is that those are lessons that they can take with them and use elsewhere. I could care less if they. I mean, that's great if they go on and play D1 athletics or any college athletics, but I would be happier if they take that work ethic and do something that they truly want to do and have a successful life in many aspects according to what they think is successful. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, where can people contact you and reach out to you if they want to talk more training, life, whatever?
So you can reach me on Twitter at coach_Ridderbos, and that's RIDDERBOS. It's kind of hard to spell, but kind of just how it sounds, I guess. And I don't really use it. My Instagram is more personal, so I don't really. I mean, you can request to follow me, but you're not going to get anything training wise on Instagram. But reach out and DMs on Twitter. That's fine. And then if you want to, shoot me an email at everett.ridderbos@holyfamilyhs.com. So, and I'm happy to connect with anybody on anything, really, training, whatever. Cool. Just hit me up.
All right, Veirs, what about you, man? Where can people reach out to you and learn more about training?
Oh man, I don't got any social medias and stuff like that. That's just the military side of things for myself. I try to stay off the grid a little bit. So
you're hidden.
Yeah, I'm a. If you see me physically, then yes, I will talk to you about training. But yeah, the whole social media thing kind of, yeah,
So
you
people
can't reach me.
So people have to travel and train with you in person, right?
Yeah. That's why I like going on here. You know, it's just like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Mystery man. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. All right.
Mm.
Well, I'll wrap it up. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Rep by Rep Strength Podcast. You can find me at travisbarrett.com and just click the contact form and it'll send me an email. Or you can join the Strength Circle, travisbarrett.com/community. All right. Thanks for joining in on another podcast.